what's up, comrades? Hope you're all doing great. We're here for, what is this? Volume 5. Yeah, that's what it is. Volume 5 of Overlord. And this is part 1 of the humans of Aranto? Is that the name of the capital? Anyway, the human kingdom. This is part 1. There's technically 3 parts, but there's part 1. Volume 6 is part 2, and then we get some like kind of side bullshit stuff going on, which is all represented in the anime. If you've watched it or seen my reviews of that stuff. But anyway, so this one begins with Gazoff. I think it's Gazoff. Gazoff is kind of wandering around, and he runs into Bran or Bran. I'm going to say Bran. Bran, who's in an alleyway, he looks totally fucking wasted. In fact, Gazoff hasn't seen this guy since he defeated him in that duel that Bran was all about. Bran, if you don't remember, is the bandit king or whatever that was like, you know, super strong. He's like a Auriculum or like adamantite level like adventurer. He's not an adventurer, he was like a bandit, but he's like of that caliber. He like held his own versus Gazoff, who's like the best warrior in like not just the kingdom, but like the whole area or something. The leader of the royal select for the kingdom, and he held his own against him, and then he's trained and gotten even better. He fights with a katana, and then he's the one that he fought Shaltir for like 2 seconds and was like ruh-roh and like fucking ran off like a little bitch. And so Gazoff knows him from there, and he's like, oh, that guy looks so familiar, and he's like, hey, Bran. And then the creature looks up and he's like, it is you. And then Bran is like, life is pointless, there's no reason for any of this, something. We are nothing compared to the monsters that exist out there. And he's talking about Shaltir, of course. And the Gazoff's like, I don't want to hear this shit from you, and he grabs him and like drags him back to the barracks so he can get cleaned up. Meanwhile, we start with Sebus. Sebus is like a huge point in this story. He's like kind of if the previous story with the Lizardman, Kokaitis was kind of like the main character from Nazarick. In this one, it is Sebus for sure. So he's in the capital as well with Solution. Remember, they're traveling around building networks and like learning more about the kingdom. And so they're here, they're doing stuff. He finds an old lady as he's just like walking around, and she looks like she needs help. And then he thinks about the master who created him. And the master who created him, we get like more story about this later, but I'll just bring it up here. I just want to let you know that it's like, this is not the point in the story where we learn this information. He kind of mentions it briefly, but the member of like Ain's guild that created him and instilled in him his like personality is the guy who he had a previous guild, and his previous guild before the current guild that is now he's gone, right? So the guild before this guild, they went around and they would help lower level adventurers, and they would like build them up and like help them get like started and protect them from like player killers and stuff. And in fact, we learn later that this guy is the guy who essentially got oh God, what's his original name? Anyway, Ainz now, right? When he was a human in like the real world, when he first started playing Yggdrasil, he was getting killed all the time, couldn't make it anywhere, was just getting bored with the game and everything. And the only reason he stuck around and eventually became the guild master of this guild was because Sebus's master saved him with his previous guild, and then they worked together and they built the Ainz guild. Right, which is like, he gets the name Ainz. I'm sorry if that's kind of confusing, but he's a very kind-hearted person, and he put into Sebus, when he designed him, this strong desire and push to like rescue others and to help other people and to, you know, protect the weak and stuff. And so Sebus has this kind of like built in, even though he's like a monster and doesn't give a fuck about humans and stuff, he does want to like right wrongs and protect the weak, because that's like what his master, the one who created him, when the divine beings like kind of gave to him. So he helps this old lady, and he thinks about this stuff, and she's like, oh no, I can take care of myself. And he's like, shut up. And then we kind of just like go completely off, and there's just like this random village somewhere in the kingdom. This is not the kingdom. This is not the village. I think this is Riestes. Riestes is the name of the kingdom. Arantel is the town where Momon does like his adventuring out of. I think that's right. Anyway, so Restes. So this is just one of the. It's a random village. It's not the village with like Henri and Inferia and stuff like that. This is not a random village. And we take the perspective of this assassin lady, and I think this is the one who used to be. She used to actually be an assassin in like the Theocracy or the Theocracy area. Anyway, she's like a ninja, and so her and there's another ninja, they like kill some guards, and they're wandering around, and they use some sort of magical item to like turn the guards that they kill into like zombies, so they'll keep like walking back and forth on the walls so no one thinks that anything's amiss. And they comment, there's some commentary about how this whole place looks sketchy as shit because it's just like an open field, like farm field, but there's lots of walls around it, which doesn't make any sense because what kind of village has the money or like the desire to build like walls around like just like regular, like if they're just growing like tomatoes or some shit. We then find out that these two are part of the adamantite adventuring group Blue Roses. And we also learn that that a lot of these adamantite groups, they have like colored versions. There's like a red one, they're the blue one, and then Momon and Nabe sorry, I had to sneeze, are like the black. And I think there's another group as well. I think there's actually 4, but they don't mention that color. Or maybe they didn't show them paying attention. And then we learn that their team leader hates killing innocents. I mean, these two ninjas are like assassins, or they used to be assassins. So they don't really give as much fuck. But they try to follow their master, or the head of their group, which is Lacuse, I think is her name. And the Blue Roses are an all-female adventuring group, and they're like super powerful and stuff, obviously. And then we also learn that they're here to fight against a criminal organization called the Eight Fingers. And the Eight Fingers, each finger represents like a different form of like criminality. So there's like prostitution. And it's like bad crimes, right? It's not just like fun crimes like prostitution. It's like actual like sex slavery. It's this drug, which is like the black flower. And this black flower is like a combination of like, it's like super heroin or something. So it's like fentanyl. Let's see. Yeah, just all kind of stuff. I don't remember all of them. There's 8 of them. Racketeering, maybe. I don't know. Oh, here we go. Gambling, slavery, sex slavery, drugs, whatever. So they're here to burn this field down. And there's a bunch of their villages that are full of this black flower as well, but they're going to like do their best, the best they can to like nip it in the bud as much as they can. And that there's some noble who's backing them up, who has like trying to keep themselves like on the DL, but they want to like try to stop the black fingers as much, or the 8 fingers as much as possible, but they're working like kind of secretly. And that's why instead of sending guards or anything, or their own soldiers, they're hiring this adventurer. And then we learn that adventuring groups usually do not get involved with politics. That's like part of their deal. And like the guild like shuns getting involved with like political organizations or groups. It's like, hey, you want something, you submit a request to the guild, and you can't do direct requests, but if it's involving like a governmental body or something, the guild's like, no, we don't do that. Because it's like these adamantite level adventurers are like stronger than like a whole army. Like each one is like could defeat like a whole army or something. And so they're here trying to like, and that's the thing too. It's like, so there's obviously going to be like nobles who are in cahoots with these 8 fingers, but you can't prove it unless you can find like hard evidence, like written stuff with seals and crap. And so they're actually here looking for that, and burning the fields is just like a bonus. And so they look around for that, but can't find anything. And oh well, what you gonna do? We then get a point of view from like a sad orphan boy who's like, he just got like beat up and he lost his like ramshackle home, and now he's just got like he's in like a different shack, and he's like, his clothes are soaking wet, and he's just lying in the rain, and these guys who beat him up are like adults, and he's like 6 years old. And then he sees something that he compares to like the sun. It's like the most glorious bright thing ever. And then it's like the first time anyone's ever recognized him as like an actual person, because his parents like died when he was really young or some shit or whatever. And we find out that kid is Klein. You remember Klein, don't you? You probably don't. Because I didn't really either. At least when I was watching the anime. But I know he is now, obviously, because I've seen like so much for the anime goes to like book 11 or 12, I think. And this is book 6. No, 5. This is book 5. And so who Klein is? Klein is the personal protector of the Golden Princess, Renair. Yeah, that's her name. And we met her 2 books ago because we had like the king and Gazov like hanging out, having arguments with like Marquis Raven and stuff, who comes up important. He's important to remember. And so Klein, and he was like an orphan boy like Gazov and stuff. And so Klein is like one of the major players in this book and the next book, as like he's kind of like the Z, if you will. Him and Bran are both kind of like a combination of like the anime protagoon for this arc. They use 2 books that comprise this arc. There's also Renair, and then there's kind of like the Blue Roses as like the human equivalents. And then on the Nazarick side, it's Sebus for the most part, and then a little bit of like Demiurge. Okay. And so that's his dream. He was the orphan who was like beat the shit out of him. The princess is the one who saved him, and then he became her personal guard, and he loves her more than anything in the whole world. He has his own private quarters, which is very unusual even for like protectors of the crown. Like even Gazov, I think Gazov has his own place, but it's because he's like the lord, he's like the greatest fighter ever and all this other stuff. He also has this like beautiful white plate mail, which he likes to keep immaculate because he represents like the princess, and she's like the youngest of the family. There's like 2 older princesses at least, and like 2 older sons at least. So she's just like, she exists as like a noble, and like, you know, but she's essentially just exists in like the Crusader Kings 3 aspect to be married off to make like alliances, and she's avoided that so far. But I think she's pretty young at this point. I think they're both in like their mid-teens. I don't think it identifies them particularly, but I get the vibe that she's supposed to be like 15, 16, and he is as well, maybe a little bit older or younger than her. Anyway, so he preps for, he thinks about all this stuff, he thinks about the princess, and then he heads out. So he immediately goes to like this indoor training facility, which is like very unusual, but the kingdom has a bunch of these they always have dignitaries coming in because they're trying to like manage relations between like the empire and the theocracy and some other shit. And so they like to keep stuff kind of like on the DL. So he comes in, he stretches, he does some sword swings, and Gazov like walks by and he's like, hey, what's up? Normally they wouldn't train together because again, he like represents the princess and she represents the king. Or no, Gazov represents the king, and for some reason that's like a no-no, or like political stuff, or I don't know. There's some political bullshit reason why they like don't normally hang out or train together. I in my notes I wrote something about him being the princess's bodyguard and Gazov being like the strongest knight in the land. Who like, but he's also like the direct. I don't know. He's like special forces who works. It's like if you ever see that show, The Unit, which is it's like there's 3 seasons of it. It's all pretty fucking good, to be completely honest. I really enjoyed my time watching it. That is, but it's kind of like that. Like they work directly for like the president, and he works directly for the king or something. Anyway. But no one else is here, so no one can watch them. So they duel, and Gazov, there's like, oh, we're just going to duel, and I'm not actually training you because I'm not allowed to train you. But then, he does train him. It's just like secret bullshit training. So they talk about his fighting style, and we learn that Klein is the equivalent of like a gold plate adventurer, which I really love that they did this and they established this early on, and this writer does this because it makes things just like, when you're talking about power creep and power in like shonen, it's good to have like a base measurement for like characters, especially because this light novel spends so much time with like people who aren't Ainz and like the guardians of the Tomb of Nazarick, that it's nice to have like, okay, how does this work? And we know they're all like on a whole different level. Like sometimes it comes up and it's like Ainz is like very like hand wavy about being like, oh yeah, I've mastered like all tier 10 magic for like his classes or whatever. Like it's nothing. Like, oh yeah, everyone does. I'm like a level 100 guy. That's like normal. And then here it's like people talk about like tier 4 magic, like holy shit, tier 4 magic? That's like incredible. And he's like, what? Anyway. But again, Gazov's like an adamantite level, roughly. Let's see. And he doesn't have any natural talent, apparently, which comes up a lot. But it's all through, it's like Bran. Bran has natural talent, but he also, he has grit. And Klein just has like grit. So it's pretty impressive that he's able to like come from like nothing and have no like natural ability and then be like equivalent to like a gold plate adventurer. Because gold plate's not like the best. There's like a bunch afterwards, but it's like middle of the road. So it's not bad. So that's really good. We also find out the princess is having some girl time with like her one and only female friend who's a noble or something like that. Anyway, after that point, Klein heads over to the dining hall. We just learned that nobody really likes him because he's got like an honorable position and he's just some shitbag. And so some of them treat them bad. They don't really hang out with him and stuff. We get some like interesting but not really important world building. It's kind of like that thing where we learned about all these kingdoms that have like no relevance to like the story at all between Albedo and Ainz in the previous book. It's good. It makes the world feel bigger, which is always nice. Like there's a lot of shit going on that we may not be aware of, and there's like lots of possibilities of things going on, which is, I feel like, very important for this story. Like some stories can be kind of like closed in and be like more select, but with this it's important to understand like there's a lot of shit going on elsewhere, because there's the whole thing with Ainz trying to like find people or find reminiscence of other like isekai people or whatever and having like a difficult time. And if it was all just kind of like everything's here and the library that accounts for like the whole world is right here, then it would be like much easier for him to get a hold of that information. So the writer does an excellent job like accounting for that whole situation. Let's see, learns. Yep, bunch of assholes treat him like shit. Klein then heads over to Renaer's room, the princess. And normally he wouldn't do this, especially when she's meeting with like her friend, but she like ordered him to come, so he like, he's gonna do what he's told. He thinks about the maids in the castle and how they're all noble women who are like kind of Renaer. They're like third daughters or whatever, so they don't have like much choice in life to like, but they can like come be a maid in like the castle and that can give their family like prestige and they can make some money or like find a good husband that way or whatever. But they all they hate him because he's from the lower classes, so technically he has like a higher rank than they do because they're maids. But it's kind of like Chained Echoes. Which you can go back and see. I did a review. It's like a JRPG style game that was made in like 2004 or early. I played it in 2025, and I think the video's posting in 2026, right? So it's all over the place. I really enjoyed it. It's kind of woke, but it's like not woke enough that it ruined the experience for me. It almost did, but there's a character in there I never used because he was shit. And that's his deal. He was like a noble, and he got sold into like a house somewhere else, and then all the maids like treated. It's like the reverse of this actually, because they all treated him like shit because he used to be a noble, and they're all from like poorer classes. But you know, this is like kind of the opposite. Like Clyde has like a higher rank than them, but they treat him like shit because they're higher. They have nobility, and the big thing in the kingdom, which is very accurate to like how feudalism like works, is they have all these nobles, and they don't always like align with the king, right? Like I mean, back in like France and less so Italy. Italy was more like kind of city states, but like in France and somewhat in like England, but like in Germany and stuff, you'd have like kingdoms or whatever they fucking call them. And then you'd have like under them, they'd have barons, and sometimes the king would be like just doing his thing, and then barons would be like having a war, and the king would just like let them have a war because he didn't have enough power to stop it, right? Like, and so that's kind of here. It's like there's the king, but all these noble factions have like their own thing going on. The king just like he has a very tenuous grip on like everything that's going on, so that's pretty realistic. Anyway, so he runs to see the princess, and when he gets there, he sees one of the adamantite adventurers from the first chapter. I think this is Lacus, that's the leader of the Blue Roses, talking to Rhaenyra about like crop rotations and other kind of policies she's trying to get in. And we start to get the information that Rhaenyra is like a fucking genius. Like, no joke. Like, this is not like, oh, she's kind of a genius or she's smart. No, she's like a genius. She has these ideas that like she proposes them and everyone like scoffs at them. But then like when like other smart people start talking about them, like that's actually a fucking genius idea. Like if we could get people convinced that this would work, and like, you know, it's like the crop rotation. If we could get them to just like take a little bit of a hit for like a year, it would, the profits and the yield would be like exponential like in the following years. Like it's like a lot of long-term scheming. Essentially, is the stuff she's coming up with, and she's the one who has all these programs that are like, she's essentially the one who like shut down slavery in the kingdom, and like she seems like a very kind-hearted person. We learned that she is a complete fucking psychopath, but at this point, the book's going real hard on like how great and how wonderful she is and how nice she is. There is some kind of like, she says some stuff that's kind of sketchy here, so we're starting to get like some idea. But up to this point, whenever the golden princess comes up, everyone's like, she's so beautiful and she's so kind and benevolent, and all she does is like bless people. And then, you know, here we start to see a little bit of like the cracks or like hints of cracks. Oh, and then he sees in the corner, he sees the ninja Tina, I think is her name, or Tia. It might be, it's one of those two, I don't remember. Anyway, it's not important. She's Ninja Chick. So Ninja Chick, and then there's like the other ninjas there as well. I think there's 4 of them. No. Yeah, there's one of the Ninja Chicks, there's Lacus, and then there is Rhaenyra. I think it's just 3 of them. Yeah, I think so. Fuck. Anyway, she's hunched in the corner. They chat about the Blue Roses. They talk about the 8 Fingers and the raids in the Black Flower Fields. And then they got a message from like the beginning, like the first chapter or whatever, and it needs a cipher. And so and Rhaenyra's like, oh, let me look at it. And she looks at it for like 2 seconds and is like, this is what it says. She decrypts it, and everyone's like, holy shit. And you might be like, oh, she's involved in this. Like, no, this is here to establish, again, kind of like reestablish what people have been saying, that she is like smart as shit. Like she's like the smartest person in the kingdom, like by far. Like she's outclasses all of them with like her intelligence, but also because of her intelligence, she's a complete psychopath. It's like no human emotions. Anyway, we'll get to that later. It has information on some of their fingers and some of their shit that's going on with all of them and whatnot. And then someone makes some comment about evil caving in on itself or whatever. And that kind of wraps up that visit. Okay, so Klein later on visits a tavern where he meets up with 2 other members of this adamantite group. This evil-eyed chick who's some lowly elf undead lady, vampire, I think we find out later. And then some muscle mommy, which, meh. Well, we did get a lot of world building here. We find out that the Blue Roses here is this all-female adamantite group. There's another one that's red something. There's Momon and Abe, which are black. And then there was like another one, but they're all retired. They talk about their group and also about the theocracy. Okay. And how maybe the theocracy started the Adventurers Guild. What did I put? I don't think they have an Adventurers Guild over in the theocracy because they hate non-humans. That's part of like their whole religion or whatever. And so there are lots of concerns about demi-humans creating kingdoms and about getting power and stuff like that, because they're already more powerful than humans. They then turns to Gazoff, and they also talk about magic, how there's like 10 levels of magic, but that no one's ever gotten past like level 6 or whatever. They also talk about some evil group that existed 500 years ago that almost destroyed the world, but then it fell into like infighting. So they talk about that. Then they talk about Klein has a lack of natural ability, but he trains real hard and he's got magic items and stuff. And then him and the muscle mommy talk about this move that he's used and that he's perfected that she taught him. We learned that there were like 13 heroes at some point, and they fended off like the evil demons or whatever. and that they weren't all humans. And so the humans don't talk about them so much. They only talk about the human heroes out of the 13. We then learn that the leader of the Blue Roses has one of the legendary heroes' like best weapons. And then one of the girls mentioned seeing her talking to it, which is kind of sketchy because it's supposed to be cursed. They don't know. At that point, the girls leave. We then switch over to a meeting of the Eight Fingers. They were talking about the drug dealing lady's plans and about how like several of her farms keep getting hit and trying to figure that out. And so she requests help from the Six Arms, which are like the toughest underground fighters, and that each one is like equal to Gazov and how she needs them. And they're like, cool, let's do it. Then the leader mentions Momon and if anyone has approached him to bring him in to their organization to work for them instead of working as like an adventurer. Intermission time comes, and then Momon is counting up his money, and he's like, oh, it's not enough. He follows up, thinks about everything that he needs, as well as like the whole Lizardman thing. Then he focuses, his whole point here is not to get money, it's to focus on his reputation, but he also needs money to pay for all this stuff that his subordinates are using. And he's just thinking about how maybe he should pay his subordinates, like a job, give them some incentive to do better or whatever. And then he thinks about making like a fake currency. And then, because it will have value to the Guardians because they can actually use it for stuff. And then he realizes that he's been talking to himself a lot lately. And this is a habit he picked up at the end of the days of his guild because there just weren't that many people around. At some point in his musings, Nabe comes in. She's talked about she secured like a whole line of iron. And it's like, why do they need iron? And it's because iron needs all sorts of different things. And that the iron value is different based on the location. So if they can get a good influx of iron, there's stuff they can do with it, or they can trade with it and whatnot. And this part of this is like, if they can get iron for cheap here and then they can take it over here and sell it, they're going to make a lot of money. So he's trying to find more ways to make money in this world because their money is not as valuable or whatever. And so it's another way. And then there's a whole thing with him planting wheat fields and growing wheat with like the skeletons because they can work so well. And so hopefully some of the stuff works out so they don't have to worry about money as much. Elsewhere, Sebus is visiting the Wizards Guild. It's Sebus. He's the I don't think he's a floor guardian, but he's on the same level as the floor guardians because he's like the head of like the Pleiades and like securing like the whole thing, making sure it's all nice and stuff. Anyway, he's super handsome. He's super elegant. He comes to the Wizards Guild all the time, and he's looking for some spell scrolls. This is another thing that Ainz is spending money on, is collecting these scrolls. And so he's trying to collect scrolls that a lot of people would just pass on or whatever. And then he thinks about how he lost time helping the old lady from earlier and that he might not have enough time to accomplish all his chores now, which is upsetting because he doesn't want to upset Lord Ainz. He then decides to do a little exploring on his way back because I guess he made up some time. So he wanders in the bad part of town, and then he finds this guy tossing out like a bag of garbage into the alleyway. But as Sebus passes by, a hand reaches out from the bag and grabs him, and it's a woman, and she's nearly dead. Then the man who tossed out the bag comes out, and Sebus starts questioning him about what's going on. And Sebus has this whole thing where like the guy who created him, which is one of the original guild members of Ainz, was like a very noble person, and I think we learn more about this later, but just kind of a quick one here. He was the guy who originally saved what was his original name? Ainz, the new Ainz, and Momon. Yeah, so when he first started playing Yggdrasil, he just was getting player killed all the time, and eventually the creator of Sebus came and saved him, and then later on they created the guild together that they had. And so this guy was all about like helping weaker people and doing right and justice and all that stuff. So Sebus has that like built into him. And so he like rescues this woman by like threatening this guy, and then he gives him money so he can flee the country and doesn't have to say anything. And then Sebus brings the woman back and has Solution cure her with some of the scrolls that they had, and she's not pleased with this at all. Sebus doesn't care. He's like, just do it. Do what I tell you to do, woman. Anyway, he thinks about how he has to strive to help people. Okay, now it talks about it. Yeah, so he was a champion fighter guy. Like, he's the one who had, like, the championship armor that Ainz used before, right? I think against... Did he use it against Sheltier? I don't remember. He used it before. So he saved him, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, his guild before the guild that Ainz joined was all about helping lower-level players, right? He also helped Aura's master as well and brought her into the guild. So he's just like a really kind, loving kind of person who just helped out the poor and the weak. So this is why Sebus has this burning passion to like help people, and he considers that. And he thinks about how if it ever comes in a conflict with Nazarick, he wouldn't do it. But so far, his drive to like help people has never interfered with his ability to serve as like the butler of Nazarick. A bit later, he goes and gets food and returns after Solution has healed the girl. They chat for a bit, and then he, let's see, he hopes to chat with the girl. Solution is really mad at him about everything and about not taking things seriously, or like not doing, like, why are you rescuing people and all this stuff. Eventually she calms down. They chat for a little bit longer. Oh, no. Sorry. He goes to chat with the woman who he rescued. She's super mad about everything, about being abused, about all this crazy stuff and whatever. But he eventually gets her to calm down, and then they chat for a minute before she rests. Outside the room, Solution again questions Sebus's actions. That's right. He says that she might be useful, so that's why he rescued her, and they'll figure it out later. And then Solution is super doubtful about that. We find out later the girl's name is Tuwari. She's cooking and cleaning and serving Sebus as like a maid, as like another person who's in this house serving Solution, because Solution's supposed to be like the noblewoman, right? And Sebus is like, oh, food's okay. She's very attached to him and scared to go outside on her own and stuff. Sebus excuses her and at some point and goes to see Solution. They talk about Tuwari. Solution again is like, she's a problem, blah, 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 blah. Sebus is like, no, there's a reason why she's here. It's going to make them look less odd. Then someone comes to the door. It's the slave guy who owned Tuwari and the other guy worked for, and there's some government official that he's paid off. So meet with Solution, who is like, whatever, Butler, take care of this. I don't have time for this nonsense. And he admits that they do have Tuwari, but he makes some mistakes in revealing that he actually does care about her, and he realizes he's dealing with these guys who are a little more crafty than he originally gave them credit for. So they kind of back him in a corner, and then they leave. And the Solution asks, what's he going to do? And he's like, I'm going to go for a walk, and I'm going to think about it. She then contacts Ein's band is back to report that Sebus is committing treason. Dun, dun, dun. Over in Gazov's house, Bran wakes up. He's like, holy cow, Gazov has a super nice house. Gazov then comes in and checks on him, and then mentions he has to go to work so they can chat later. And then Bran's like, okay, cool, sounds good, buddy. Back over at Sebus, he's wandering around thinking. He hears some guy tailing him, but he's like, oh, whatever, I don't care. He then sees some kid getting beat up. He saves him, and then he hears some more people following him. And then a voice calls out to him. And then we kind of go back in time a little bit, and we find out that the person trailing him is Klein. And he sees Sebus do his thing. He follows him and then thanks him for doing a job that a knight should have done. So there's like, he senses someone following him, right? But then the new person that joins after he saves the kid is Klein. Okay, there we go. So there's still like the mysterious third person or people. At that point, Sebus is like, oh yeah, it's no big deal. I'm just doing my thing. And then Klein's like, please teach me. You look super strong and I want your help. And Sebus checks out his hands and his weapons and he's like, all right, sure. He then gets ready to punch Klein to death. It almost gives a despair. That's right. Okay, so what he's doing is he's creating like this ultimate aura of like death, and he's going to launch an attack that's going to kill Klein. And he's trying to see if Klein's going to like flinch, and Klein doesn't flinch because he remembers the princess and how he has to use Rainier to overcome his fear. And it's like he does like the litany of fear from like Dune. He doesn't do that, but he's essentially doing like a mantra and thinking about how much he loves Rainier, and he's able to overcome the fear. And then Sebus almost like kills him, but like misses him just barely. But Klein didn't know it was going to happen, and so Sebus congratulates him for overcoming his fear, and it's going to unlock some sort of like limit break or ability to like overcome and be stronger and do whatever. And he says you can teach him actually like more stuff later, but this is like the most important thing because now you can face death and be okay. And then he's about to turn to leave, and then Bran's like, wait, and then we go back in time again, and we see Bran was just like wandering around and also saw Sebus and Klein. So he's following Sebus, and then he sees the thing with the kid, and then Klein starts following, and now Bran's like super interested, and he's following both of them. And then he senses like some others. And so after he witnesses the death stare thing that he does to Klein, he sees that Klein has more heart than he does, and he steps out and they all talk about what's going on because Bran was like peeing his pants when he saw this thing, and he wasn't even the one getting attacked. So Klein knows of Bran from the Battle of Gazov all those years ago, and they chat about being a warrior. Sebus asks them to leave so he can take care of some assholes, and they're like, no, we're going to stick around and fight. And so Sebus and Bran beat their opponents very, very easily. There's like 3 guys, and this is like, so there's the original stalkers, and then like Bran joins, and then Klein joins. It's like this whole menagerie of people that are like getting around. And the people following Sebus originally are obviously belong to like the slave guy and whatnot. Klein has a lot of difficulty fighting his battle, but he's still able to win because of his ability to be a shonen anime protag. And then Sebus gets some information from the guys. The guy from earlier, the slave guy, is one of the 8 fingers, and these guys who attacked him right now are like members of the 6 arms or something. And they also learn where all the slaves are kept. So they figure they might as well go save them now, so there'll be less issues later. So Sebus is like, I'm gonna go take care of this. And then Bran and Klein are like, we want to come too. So they do. So they get to the place, and Sebus is like, I'm going to go through the front door. Bran and Klein, you check out the back and take care of everything that needs to be done. And then Sebus is going to kill people if that's okay. And they're like, yeah, sure. They're slavers. Fuck them. So, too good. If he's like, I'm going to try not to kill them if I needed, but I will definitely kill them if push comes to shove. And of course, he doesn't even try not to kill them because he doesn't care about human life at all. So they'll head out. Sebus goes in and kills his way through the whole place. The guy from earlier, the official, like the human, like the government official, not the 8-finger guy, is there, and he's beating some woman to a pulp because that's how he gets his rocks off. And Sebus rolls in and he's like, hello. And the guy's like, oh no, what are you going to do? Something, you can't kill me. And Sebus murders the shit out of him. Meanwhile, Klein and Bran head to the back door. They defeat a couple guys there, and as they enter, they split up. Klein is going to chill here and make sure no one escapes. And then the main guy, like the Six Arms guy, who's like a super intense guy, right? Because they're all like gas off strong, along with the slave guy, and he's super like gay, right? Not like not gay as in something is gay, but like he wants to have sex with Klein because he's a weirdo. Anyway, they show up and Klein calls for help and then starts fighting the guy. But this guy is like, he calls himself the illusionist fencer, and he's at the same level as like an adamantite adventurer. So Klein holds his own for a while using just like pure instinct or whatever, like Dragon Ball Z, or no, Dragon Ball. What's it called? Super Instinct? I don't remember. Anyway, what are the Dragon Balls where he uses pure instinct? Which is the trick he learned from Sebus using his like limit break thing or whatever. And he's almost able to beat the guy, but he does have to get saved by Bran at the last second, who kills the shit out of the guy in like one strike because he's way better fighting than this stupid illusionist, which shows that like Gazov and Bran are actually better than these they're like at the level of adamantite adventurers, if not better. And then Sebus shows up and knocks out the other guy as he tries to, like the gay guy. And then he heals Klein with his chi because he's a monk. He's a monk class, stupid. Of course, that's how he does it. A bit later, Klein submits the report about everything that went down, and then he goes to see Rhaenyra. She's very worried because she loves Klein to death, like a pet. They chat for a bit. She's going to send the Blue Roses to attack the 8-fingers some more. When Klein leaves, reveals that she plays the role. Then Rhaenyra, after he leaves, she's like sitting by herself looking in her mirror, and then she starts doing this stuff with her face, and we find out this whole thing where she's like a ditzy princess who just wants to help people is like, it's just like an act. And then her brother is 100% right that she is a psychopath and she just doesn't care about life. She has no feelings. Like, she's so intelligent, smart. She's like American Psycho, that human life has no value. And she just is like, does whatever because she feels like it. Right. Or because, she legitimately loves Klein. But again, she legitimately loves Klein as in like a possession that she owns, not like, so she'll do anything. She'll kill anybody to make sure that happens. And then we find out that she kills maids and other servants like all the time. And in fact, she summons a maid now that she's going to like do something shady with because the maid doesn't like Klein. And so she is poisoned by Rhaenyra. Back to the brother. Oh, back to, we then bounce back to the Six Arms guys. So there's Zero. We meet Zero, who's the head of the Six Arms, and the rest of the Six Arms, and they talk about the raid and the illusionist guy and about getting revenge on him. Then, lastly, we hit Sebus one more time, and he's returning back to the manor that they rented out with him in Solution and Tudari. When he gets there, Solution is standing right in the front door wearing her maid uniform, and he's like, ruh-roh. And she's like, Lord Iron wants to speak with him right now. Bum, bum, bum. And that wraps up, what is this? Volume 5. So go ahead and join me in a couple weeks. Like, share, subscribe, comment, and join me in a couple weeks for Volume 6 of Overlord light novel. Bye.